Hello, join me on the adventure, and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you, once and always, for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you. Once again today, I'd like to apologize for the hiatus. Definitely not intended. And the whole conversation of hoping to get onto the Appalachian Intelligent podcast, well, it was just kind of a back and forth thing. He was magically busy all the time, you know what I mean? And it's no disrespect. I don't doubt that he was busy. That would be Ryan, who is the only host now. Apparently Justin had gotten busy with other things in life. I'm not exactly sure of the details, and I don't like to pry too much. But obviously still recommend the show and everything, but he's been in hiatus ever since. I mean, that show is just, I don't know, he's just been too busy. So, and that's kind of what happened to me as well, unfortunately, the last few months. I mean, opened up the year with that fun episode. I'd like to say it was a fun episode to do, where you could see like Nephilim-type giants and chimeras in video games, particularly the Golden Axe series for the Sega Genesis. That were in the arcade and the Sega Genesis in general, but done by Sega. Hope you liked that. If you happen to listen to it, if you haven't listened to it, do check it out. But again, obviously, so I had basically been stuck working, 6 Saturdays in a row, 6-day weeks. Easier said than done. Also, I prefer to record when my wife isn't around. I just think it's better, especially shows like this, where I can kind of concentrate on what I'm doing. So that's kind of sort of the story as to what happened. Basically just been nonstop, nonstop with this, nonstop with that, catching up with other things. And I just want to apologize for the long hiatus. Today, again, kind of catching up with things a little bit, and also a subject that I think is, something I've been kind of wanting to get into for a while. And it's been around, and I'll probably do multiple episodes on it over the course of time, but at least get the blood flowing on the topic. Mounds. We're going to talk about mounds, like burial mounds, giant mounds, Native American mounds. Were they all built by Native Americans, and there's this whole giant thing is just a myth? And no, it's all Native Americans. This giant thing is what it is. Well, many Native Americans historically will tell you that a lot of the mounds out there were actually, especially the really large ones, were not built by Native Americans, were not built by their ancestors, that they were already there when they came, but they did utilize them when the need was there. Like when it was time to bury people, they did utilize those mounds. And yes, they did create some smaller ones, I'm sure, along the way. But the large ones, and I mean the really big ones that you can see that, there's maybe like a construction site or something, you'll see something that big once in a while. But human beings didn't do that. It would either be machines or, of course, giants, Nephilim giants, Rephaim giants, Nephilim giants especially. Like you'll hear about in the Nephilim Chronicles, a travel guide to the ancient ruins in the Ohio Valley by Fritz Zimmerman. Definitely recommend that. I'm kind of piecing through it a bit and looking at a lot of kind of what I'm seeing. And what's interesting is, so here in Minnesota, which is where I live, around the Twin Cities, Golden Valley, Minnesota, particularly neighboring suburbs of, say, Crystal, Minnesota, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today. And, of course, not of course, but Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, which is a couple suburbs away, about 3 suburbs north of where I'm at. And I did live there for 3 years as well, right about when I got married. So, yes, I got married much later, but I got much later. I just didn't really date that much when I was younger because I just didn't have any luck. But that's another story. Plus, I was shy. Why am I getting into that here? I don't know. I guess I'm just throwing that out there. But just saying, I'm not the kind of guy that just, I'm not the kind of guy that just lives with people for 10 years and then marries them. That's not really my style. Whatever you do, I guess, is your style, and I'm not going to, judge at the moment. I may or may not agree with it, but it's whatever. I can't do anything about what your choice is. I still don't know why I'm going down these rabbit holes. But again, the Ohio Valley, like you look at the pictures and such of that, like you look through the book and look through all the different mounds, and some of them it's just like, there's no way regular people could have done that. It had to be giants. Like we're talking stuff that's much larger than like really tall trees and such. And then you get to one that I'm looking at right now, just right away, the mound at Neville. It's called Neville It's close to the Ohio River, and Ohio, obviously Ohio and such. 35 miles southeast of Cincinnati on State Road 52. Well, I'm looking at that mound. Yeah, a very, very, very large one. And I'm seeing the exact image in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, in what is known as Central Park. Not because it's in New York, but it's just happens to be the name of Central Park. It just happens to have the name Central Park. Very close to where I lived years ago, about 10 years ago. 10 to 8 years ago, basically. 10, 9, 8 years ago. I lived there for 3 years. In the mid-2010s, basically, you could say. It's a massive mound. It's a giant mound. And it's being used in a frisbee golf course. And that mound was not put there by humans. That mound was not put there by construction or anything. I even looked it up. Was this mound in Central Park, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, the large mound in the disc golf, frisbee golf course, was it constructed? Was it built by man? And it said no. It was actually built by a glacier. The large glaciers, it caused the ground to fold and such. You look at the mound, could not have been done by a glacier. And obviously they're going to cover that type of stuff up, or just like giant mound. Nah, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? They're never going to admit that kind of stuff. But it looks exactly like the mound I just described in Ohio. Massive. And it's just shaped too perfectly as well to have been done by a glacier, like random glaciers and such. I don't doubt that a lot of the hills, peaks, and valleys could be related to glaciers and such over the many years when there was the ice ages and such. The slow-moving glaciers, the ground might fold a little bit. But why would that mound just kind of stick out in the middle of nowhere when Brooklyn Park is not hilly at all? Brooklyn Park is not a hilly area. It's actually quite flat. That's why about, 150 years ago and such, it was farmland. Farmland is definitely, like how Iowa's farmland. It's very flat in Iowa. And there's a lot of farms and cornfields and such, and they also produce very nice offensive linemen in the NFL, too, especially with the Iowa Hawkeyes and such. But off topic there for fun. Brooklyn Park is very flat, and it used to have a ton of farms there. In fact, there's some old farmhouses that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation since after the Civil War, about 1870. It's even put on the house, established 1870. It's flat farmland. Flat, like physically flat farmland. And then out of nowhere, there's this round mound. round mound in the middle of a disc golf course. And that was not built by humans. All indications are no, that was not built by humans. And they would have admitted if it was. It would have, this was built for the frisbee golf course. Why would they build something that large anyway for a frisbee golf course? No, it's being utilized by the frisbee golf course because what the hell, why not? What the heck, why not? Pardon my French. My belief is that it is several thousands of years old. It was built by, most likely, giants. Giants, because I don't think Native Americans could build something that large. I even put it on the YouTube page for Mysterious Adventures. It'll be Mysterious Adventures 79. I believe it's called that on YouTube, just like on the Instagram is Mysterious Adventures 79, since Mysterious Adventures can't be just by itself because somebody else took it. Doggone it. But so I put the year I was born, 79. Why the heck not? So that's the Mysterious Adventures YouTube page and Instagram. Both have Mysterious Adventures 79, all kind of one long name. I called it the Giant Mound in Brooklyn Park. Unfortunately, a lot of times when you take pictures and or video, especially video, it seems like it doesn't do it justice, like it looks flatter than it is. But that mound is pretty steep. It's not as steep as some of them. And there's some pretty steep looking ones in Minnesota as well that have, large trees growing on them and such. But to me, it's a mound. And also, I think it also says, in a lot of ways, that hill or mound is actually probably really, really old because it maybe has weathered a bit over the years, eroded a bit over the years. There's evidence of erosion a bit. That is probably several thousand years old. Maybe that one dates back to even pre-flood, possibly. Otherwise, 2,500 years ago, something like that. 15 to 2,500 years ago. there's evidence that there were still giants in the United States around that time. Constant conversation. I mean, they've found so many skeletons, even in Minnesota, of giants. Obviously, Ohio, places like that, Ohio Valley, places like Tennessee, Kentucky, places. Indiana has a lot as well, but plenty of evidence that they were here in Minnesota, partially because 2,500 years ago or so, or 3,000 years ago or more, Minnesota, that they came through the Great Lakes, and then also Minnesota was actually covered by more areas of water than it is now. That's why you got the 10,000 lakes, because actually a lot of the state was actually underwater more back then than it is now. Heck, even the park that I live close to, Hampshire Park in Golden Valley, to me, all indicators are that was a shallow lake years ago. It was a small, shallow lake. A lot of the marshes around here were lakes in the past. It's just a fact. Like, it's all the evidence, like all physical scientific evidence shows it, that they were lakes. But to me, the most obvious giant mound locally in the Twin Cities area, particularly, obviously in St. Paul, there's all kinds of mounds, and they're saying that those are Native American ones and such. I believe that there's, I don't doubt Native Americans used them, and that there are Native Americans buried there. But I wouldn't be surprised, and a lot of times it has turned out that further beneath, because it's been much longer, there are giant skeletons further below. Like if you were to go down far enough, possibly because they sank, maybe, especially if they were pre-flood or even not pre-flood, just over the many years of whatever that has taken place over the years. Weather, rain, heavy rains and such can make things like that sink deeper into the earth. It's just the way it goes. Might even have caused erosion on something like that mound in Brooklyn Park. That's why there's evidence of some erosion, because you can see there's a little bit of a roll at the bottom. That's where some people believe maybe that's why why it was just a glacier. But the shape of the mound or hill, but I'd say more of a mound, the shape of it, to me, tells me that it's an actual mound and not just a hill, or like a hill created by a glacier. It's too perfectly shaped, honestly, with minor evidence of erosion over many, many years, plus the fact that there aren't trees on it. So that would also cause things to maybe smooth out a little bit. So yeah, Brooklyn Park, I think. St. Paul, apparently there's plenty around that area. They call it the Rainy River region, major river bluffs. So kind of close to like the Rainy River region around there, that there are sacred sites dating back to 1,500 to 2,500 years ago, burial, ceremonial, and cultural gathering places. So thousands of ancient Native American burial mounds and earthworks and major concentrations. So like earthworks, that sounds absolutely like, earthworks, that sounds absolutely like possibly giants many years before the Native Americans built some of that, especially the larger ones that would cover a huge area. Again, Native Americans have admitted that their ancestors said they were already there, that they were already there, and that's been passed down over the course of many years. Another area that I think has, it just reeked of Ohio River Valley, locally, close by, closer than, in two different areas, closer than Brooklyn Park even, Crystal, Minnesota, around the Bassett's Creek area. There's a Bassett's Creek Park, a very large, what I would call a mound. It looks like kind of a mound within a mound as well, where it's kind of like a rolling mound. There's like a mound and then another one, where it makes it look more like a natural hill. But if you look close enough, it's kind of like they're kind of like overlapping each other. It's kind of fascinating. And the shape, the size of it, the shape of it, and once again being used by a disc golf course, which is pretty interesting, tells me something. And just the location of it as well, and the evidence that this Bassett's Creek area, where it's kind of like a small lake or large pond, was larger. There was more evidence of there was more water there. And a lot of times these mounds pop up around watery areas. That seems to be another theme, that there's like water there as well. Also, can it tell you that there probably were plenty of Native American, there was plenty of Native American activity, especially in that area, many years ago as well. I've never found any arrowheads there. I did some searching but couldn't find it. Ancient water, there's an ancient waterway there. I put that on the YouTube page. Thankfully, the Instagram has been growing. It was pretty much nothing around Christmas time, New Year's, when I was talking to Ryan from the Appalachian Intelligence Podcast. And then all of a sudden, it just, by the grace of God and by also God putting the idea in my head to start adding some people with similar interests and similar shows and such, that it kind of triggered a little bit of an algorithm that got people starting to follow the Instagram. It's nothing huge yet, but it's growing. It's growing almost on a daily basis. It's growing, and it feels nice. But I did put a couple of videos up there on the Mysterious Adventures YouTube and even on the Instagram as well, showing what appear to be mounds. Some of that could be Native American, of course. The smaller ones would more likely be Native American mounds, close to a much larger mound that tells me that it's more of a giant mound, because I don't think Native Americans would build something that large. I just don't. And even they would admit it. Again, that a lot of those ancient, gigantic sites were already there when they came. So it's been out there. The information has been out there for many, many years, and it's not just a cover. It's not just people making stuff up as they go, like creating myths and such. Plenty and plenty of stories of Native Americans meeting up with giants, and unfortunately several battles, because the giants were not nice to the Native Americans, and even that the word how, when they'd hold up their hand, was to see if the people were human or not. Were they human or Nephilim? Because Nephilim often have been known to have 6 fingers, or 6, the 4 fingers and a thumb, but they would have 6, like where it's 5 fingers and a thumb, and possibly 2, as strange as it sounds, 2 layers of jaws, which is the weirdest thing ever. But they're monsters. A monster is a monster, So Native Americans maybe were trying to see, are you human? How are you human? So, like, how are you? No, I'm just kidding. Maybe that's where that phrase came from, but that's been out there. That's why that first happened. When they'd first see somebody else, they'd say, how? Like, show me your hand, basically. Ooh, 6 fingers. It's an enemy. Watch out. Watch out for this one. That type of thing. And obviously, that another topic for another day is the whole Lovelock Cave conversation with the giant red-haired giant, the red-haired giants and the fire and everything. Got a book about that one as well. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating. We'll stick to the mounds today, of course. And again, you can see what looks like kind of a mound within a mound. There's like 2 layering mounds possibly and again, like I've said, sometimes a hill is just a hill, but it's a very similar look to a lot of the mounds in Ohio Valley. It's a similar look where it's kind of like a double layered thing. I don't think there's any serpent mounds around here that you'd think that would be discovered. To me, it's shocking that nobody locally has talked about the Brooklyn Park one, though. That one, to me, is the most surprising and the most obvious that actually is a mound. That's not just a hill. A lot of people, they just come there and play their Frisbee golf and go home. And there's no conversation of any mound or anything. I don't know if maybe locally there aren't too many of us here that pay attention to this kind of thing. Maybe it's not much of a thing, and maybe I'm one of the guys that locally that can maybe get this information out there a little bit. It feels like locally in this area that there has been a lot of that a lot of that conversation was buried many, many, many generations ago, dating back to the 1800s and such. Because another area where I think plain as day you could see mounds there as well. Could be Native American, but again, the conversation continues that Native Americans did use stuff that was already there, because why the heck not? It's there. And the giant skeletons probably sank deeper into the earth. Oftentimes it's below the mound. When a lot of the giant skeletons have been found, they're actually below the mound. they're way down in there. And then it's like, oh my goodness, that 15-foot giant, holy cow, a 12-foot giant. They'll find it if given the opportunity to dig and look. I don't think anybody's going to get any opportunity to do that on city property or anything. That's maybe why it's city property, so it's like you can't. Na boo boo. And that's kind of the plan. But Theodore Wirth Park, which has been around since the late 1800s or even the mid 1800s. I swear I had an episode earlier in the talking about the Mothman where I had a paranormal experience there. It was quite scary, actually. Yeah, going into the Eloise Butler garden. I even swear I saw what appeared to be a woman in 1800s garb at the corner of my eye for a split second, and she's gone. So could that have been a Eloise Butler familiar spirit? Rather than calling it a ghost, a familiar spirit. Or an Eloise Butler ghost, whatever. But more than likely a spirit imitating her and trying to, just trying to scare people, that type of thing. Yep, because she was a real person, born about in 1850 or so, and died in her garden. She built the garden in Theodore Wirth Park, called a beautiful wildflower garden. Founded it and built it and planted and took care of it for many years, and died of a heart attack in her 80s in the early 1930s. So she was born before the Civil War. She actually died in that garden of a heart attack on a warm day, working in the garden in her 80s. Just, keeled over and died, basically. So that was a conversation, and I did have a couple paranormal experiences there, which are, the conversation about that is in the Mothman episode for Mysterious Adventures, just in case my friend and supervisor Alma at work, just in case she might have listened to that episode and is listening to this one. Hello. Yep, hope you liked that episode. And if anybody listened to it, let me know. Or if you like this episode, let me know too. It's more than welcome. PaladinoLive@gmail.com. PaladinoLive@gmail.com. Okay, Theodore Wirth Park, around Wirth Lake, close to the Golden Valley and Minneapolis border. In fact, it's kind of like Minneapolis more than Golden Valley. It's like the very tip there. It's the far east part of Theodore Wirth Park next to Wirth Lake. If those aren't mounds, I don't know what are. I mean, it's a park. It's like a little park area, with bike trails and such, just east of Theodore Wirth Lake. There's this old parking lot that is completely falling apart. They have not taken care of it at all over the years. And I'm telling you, those quote unquote hills around that part of the lake, plain as day, those are mounds. Oh my God, they're mounds. It's like, how is that not a mound of some kind? Again, I wouldn't doubt for a millisecond that Native Americans did use those and that there are Native Americans buried in them. Wouldn't doubt for a second. But possibly several hundred to several thousand years earlier, giants may have been buried there as well. Or giant, because they're not that big. Those are not that big. They're not as big as the ones in Crystal or Brooklyn Park, but plain as day, they're mounds. They look exactly like what I'm looking at here, close to the Mississippi River, kind of that similar look. And oftentimes, once again, it is close to bodies of water. It just seems to be something that's been a thing forever, where cemeteries / burial grounds are often close to bodies of water. Lakewood Park Cemetery, one of the oldest cemeteries, not the oldest, but one of the oldest cemeteries in the Twin Cities, by Lake Calhoun, or Bameska, but I still call it Lake Calhoun. It's the most famous cemetery in Minneapolis, I got to think, because there's so many founders of the city area and such, like there's Fridley. The city Fridley? Well, this is the people named Fridley buried there. Massive gravestones and such there. Headstones and all that, and then the whole families over the years, parts of that family buried all over the place around there. So it just seems to be a thing to have, people buried in, and it's just like we kept the tradition going on hills and such, where it all may have started from giants to Native Americans to just regular Americans as well. Maple Hill Cemetery and such, which is now a playground. Maple Hill Cemetery It's another one in Minneapolis, all known as the oldest cemetery in Minneapolis, and it's basically a unmarked cemetery now because of what happened there about 120 years ago at the beginning of the 20th century. That's how old the 20th century is, by the way, when it fell into ruin and people were like taking the headstones and just throwing them at the bottom of the hill. What are we doing? Why? And even caskets coming up and such. Oh my God. Well, they moved a bunch of the caskets to Lakewood Park Cemetery, and others that were still underneath and everything, they just left them there and built a playground. Hey kids, come on, let's play. Yay! There's Civil War veterans buried there. And other people like Jane, I forgot her name. It wasn't Jane Eyre. That's something way before. That's in the 1500s. Way back in the 1500s in the ancient history. Basically in the Virginia, excuse me. What was this person? It was another Jane, though, a British lady that got sick and died during the birth of a man's child. She died in the 1860s. You can still see the little stone there. It's still there. Died in the 1860s. Died in the 1860s. Not born in the 1860s. Died in the 1860s. It's still there in the middle of the playground, and it's just kind of in a random spot. It's not marked much for anything. It's just the stone's still there. Let's have some fun, kids. There's a nice little pool and the swing set, and then what's this? Oh, and there's another one over here. I don't. Well, what's it called now? Beltrami Park, I believe. So, yeah, interesting. It's not the only place where playgrounds and parks and stuff have been built on burial grounds and stuff, because it seems like mounds are all over the place in parks, and maybe even like it's fascinating stuff. Close by as well, the Pennsylvania woods, which I talked about on the YouTube page. The road's going, is it like a Pennsylvania Avenue? You just kind of go forward, and everything just stops, and there's this big mound-looking thing that goes on for a while. It's kind of like a longer one, that just reeks of more of a Nephilim thing. And what's it close to? Well, a body of water again. What a coincidence. But the road just totally stops because we're not touching this thing. And then it continues like a few blocks later after the quote-unquote park, Pennsylvania Woods. Another park that, was actually probably a burial ground in the past. In fact, a lot of parks are secretly burial grounds, and we don't even realize that. Theodore Wirth Park is filled with what appear to be mounds. It's not just right by the lake at the east part, but even in the pretty area where there's some dirt biking trails and such, or, mountain biking trails, dirt biking trails, whatever you'd call those. Mounds. They look like mounds there, too. They often do. And it's like, once again, the conversation continues that there's a reason why there's our parks, because, there's something going on there, and you can't touch it because it's ours, damn it, it's the city's. Can't touch it, leave it alone. In some ways, yes, respecting the dead and such, and you can't touch it, but in other ways, you can't be digging for giants either, that type of thing. Now, I understand you don't want to disturb, a beautiful area or anything, but maybe it wasn't all so beautiful before. Maybe it was just kind of a mound and such. And it wasn't like a beautiful wooded area back in the day, but then the wooded part kind of helps, this is what it is now. Leave it alone, that type of thing. Go ride your bike or go for a walk in this pretty area. Yep, interesting, isn't it, though? Interesting, isn't it, how all that seems to keep happening over and over and over again, not just locally, but nationally, and probably worldwide as well. So it's fascinating. It just seems to be a trend. I don't think it's a coincidence. It feels like a trend to me when it comes to, magically, parks seem to often have mounds, and it just feels like there's a reason. There's a reason why it's a park, because they don't want you to build anything there, because no, we're not going to do that. We're going to not disturb the ground at all here, because we're just not, for multiple reasons. Again, one out of respect, but also potentially cover up as well. Smithsonian cover-ups. Anytime somebody would find giant bones and such, the Smithsonian would come and it would be gone forever. And you'd never hear about it again, which is weird. But I guess that's how it is. Who knows what the Smithsonian's real plans are? But I suppose research and such, scientific research and all that could potentially lead to creating this kind of thing again, and working with, possibly, beings and such out there that aren't necessarily on the right side of the equation. That's kind of as we're getting closer and closer to the end, as we continue to get into that conversation, revelation and such. So, it'll be like the days of Noah. Well, what was going on in the days of Noah? There were giants everywhere. There were giants in the land. And also after that. There were giants in those days. And also after that. Well, definitely after that. And, days of Noah continue. The days of Noah are coming closer and closer. How would they say? Again, God even says it'll be like the days of Noah. So, fascinating stuff as we head into Easter. Basically, as this episode is being recorded right before Easter. So, a lot of you might be listening to this on Easter or slightly after. Who knows? But, it is, again, a fascinating trend how it always seems to wind up in parks. Parks. It always seems to wind up in parks. It's fascinating. Like you look throughout the Ohio Valley and such, over and over and over again, it's always in parks. Always. Very rarely is it just some random area. Yep. To me, it's not a coincidence at all when they put that together. I just thought that's a conversation worth having for all of us, just to kind of, give you maybe a different perspective of parks. And when you see mound-shaped, quote-unquote, hills in these parks, naturally close to bodies of water and such, or what may have used to have been bodies of water, which are maybe just kind of semi-wetlands nowadays because it's been many years. It's just, it all just kind of comes together, doesn't it, at the end of the day? To me, it's kind of like piecing pieces of the puzzle together when you continue to look at what's been going on with mounds, bodies of water, and parks all kind of being one and the same over and over and over and over again. It's a trend, not a mirage at the end of the day. So we'll definitely continue on this subject in the future. Definitely going to continue on this one. It's a fascinating thing. I'm going to probably delve deeper into this book, and by God's grace, I'd like to have a Fritz Zimmerman on this show. I mean, wouldn't that be cool to get Fritz Zimmerman on the show to hear his take on, a lot of this stuff that he has in the book. I mean, it's one thing after another, one mound after another. It is just Mound City over there in Ohio. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's just Mound State, the state of mounds. Serpent mounds, state of mounds, everything. The Nephilim Chronicles. Yep, free plug, I suppose, right? Fritz, would you like to come on sometime, please? Please. I need to be better about all of that. Man, even that looks like a mound in the episode, but in the commercial. But no, that looks like a rolling hill if you look closer. Sometimes you got to be careful. You don't want to just make a fool of yourself calling every hill out there a mound. Sometimes it's just a rolling hill, but other times, I don't know. The way it's shaped, kind of more of a round shape. Looks more like a mound to me. But, yeah, wonderful to get back on the air once again and have this conversation with you. And I got to get guests on this show. I don't think just me talking is going to really help the show grow necessarily. But at the same time, I still would like to bring this to you, this information to you, and hope this is a fruitful topic, that this doesn't just make you roll your eyes and get bored and think that Joey's just making stuff up as he goes. Because Joey's not making stuff up as he goes. I absolutely am not. I'm calling things as I see them. And when you compare what's going on in Ohio to what's even going on here locally, I think there's more to it. And it just tells you just how widespread a lot of this was in the past. Think of how many of these beings and such may have been here pre-flood and even after the flood. Who knows? Do we know? So, but a lot of physical evidence tells me that that is more common than a lot of us would like to believe. The history of our Earth is far different than what we could imagine. As a famous line was said, it's often, you hear it at the beginning of the Blurry Creatures episode all the time. A British guests they had on years ago. The history of our Earth is far different than what we could imagine. It's amazing, actually, to think that all this stuff was going on here. When a lot of us just thought, oh, maybe there were some Native Americans and maybe there was nobody in this particular area. And then you hear about some of this and it's like, oh my gosh, wow, that's really interesting, isn't it? So it makes you want to delve a little deeper, as long as you don't search for the wrong beings and the wrong things. You don't want that necessarily. As sometimes I was playing with that ghost radar, like you'll hear about in the Mothman episode, and it put me in a weird place for a little while there. It was creepy, scary. Some scary things took place. Whew, I don't want to go through that anymore. It's not necessary, to look for like evil, but to at least look at history and say, things really are different, and why the cover-up, guys? That type of thing. Makes you want to question things a little bit. And again, put into perspective as to maybe why parks were made in certain areas. Weird. The Maplewood Cemetery one is kind of more of an ironic and weird thing than, say, covering up things necessarily. But even that one is kind of like that in its own sense. Like, it just went from a cemetery to a playground. That's weird. That's just weird. But I guess that's just kind of how things had to go with that one. Whew. So anyhow, we will wish a lot of you a very, very happy Easter. And happy Easter. God bless you. Thank you, Lord. He is risen. And I'm proud to say that he is risen. Very proud to say he is risen. So thank you, Lord. With that, I would like to wish you, again, a happy Easter, a wonderful whatever amount of time it is until the next episode, and hopefully I can get a guest on. And you are more than welcome to call into the show, or even just leave a message, an email at palladinolive@gmail.com, palladinolive@gmail.com, be it just a story that you want to tell in an email or a voicemail, which could be, you could create a voicemail by opening up your smart device, pressing the, opening up the free voice recorder on your smart device, like I said, pressing the record button and talking into it like a voicemail. And then I would then convert it into an MP3 file thanks to cloudconvert.com. And then I could have it on the show, or you could even come on as an actual guest as well. So whatever you want to do, let me know. And let's go on another adventure together. Let's go on this adventure together. We'll talk to you next time in the next adventure. Until then, take care and God bless.